the east coast of Tasmania. Pretty amazing stuff. Up that way, northern Tasmania, and down that way, Hobart. In between, 317 nautical miles of ocean racing and 133 kilometres of mountain running. The best way to see it all, a race, the Bogues Three Peaks Race. Welcome aboard for the 1997 event.
Out, Mick.
It's an event that not only takes competitors through some of the most spectacular scenery in the world, but will test their mental stamina, physical toughness, and at times their will to survive. Each yacht crewed by only 5 people, 2 are usually specialist mountain runners. From the picturesque port of Beauty Point, the first sail takes crews across Bass Strait, a stretch of water that has a fearsome reputation. Once reaching Flinders Island, the runners face a mind-numbing 65-kilometre haul along dusty roads and up bush tracks, ascending the island's highest peak, Mount Strzelecki. While the runners rest from their first challenge, the yachts must sail the testing east coast. 127 nautical miles of calms, tidal rips, shallow channels and frequent squalls. By then the runners hope to be ready for their second test, a 35-kilometre sprint over 2 mountains in the Freycinet National Park. Hopefully in daylight, because it's not a nice place to be after dark if you're a runner. The final sail, some decisions to be made. A shortcut through the Denison Canal or tackle the southern capes of Tasman and Rowell. If the wind is from the southwest and strong, it can get very rough, but those same winds can also close off the canal option. Finally, Mount Wellington towers over Australia's southernmost city like a sentinel. To complete the race, runners must conquer its summit in a final dash for the line.
If you want a tough, hard, physical and intellectual challenge, getting yourself around the Three Peaks course is all of those things.
Dr. John Saul, last year's winner, is back again for his 6th attempt at the challenge. 16 yachts started 1997, a spectacle that brings 12,000 Tasmanians to the upper reaches of the Tamar River to farewell the cruise. There is a carnival atmosphere dockside with the Coles Food and Wine Fair. It kept the crowds entertained as the race entrants undertook last-minute preparations. A fresh westerly forecast bringing last-minute nerves.
I don't know about these 2 and 3 metre waves out there, swells coming through. That's going to be interesting, I think.
It's always a bit of an apprehension. You don't want to sort of be getting too crook or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's in the back of my mind that, yeah, anything can happen out there.
As the start neared, the fleet took to the water, warming up for the sail ahead. The freshening breeze meant pedal power wasn't required for the first time in years.
Not to get on the bikes for a start. That'd be an absolute joy and a pleasure, really, Steve. I could think of much better ways to start than riding a bike.
For the race, pedal power or rowing is an allowable form of propulsion that has spawned some remarkable contraptions over the years in an effort to manage light wind conditions. A 200-year-old cannon sent the fleet on its way. The mad rush for Bass Strait was on. Computerland, Vallaroo, Wild Apple and Flinders Island community headed the fleet, sandwiched between a flotilla of spectator craft. Catamaran Bastet, skippered by Jeff Graham, picked an opening gap, threading his twin-holed flyer through, with acceleration that quickly left the others in his wake. The spectator fleet followed the procession past Garden Island and Georgetown and onwards to open sea. Bastet powered past Low Head, her lead now under threat from the Trimaran Island Paint Pro, with Naiad Business Post, Haphazard, Cascade, Computerland and Vallaroo following out the heads. The fleet left Low Head, followed by a stiff westerly breeze, promising a fast run to Flinders Island and a close race between the multi-hulls and the bigger monos. At sea, they find 2 to 3 metre seas and following winds, giving crews a downhill sleigh ride, exciting but hard on the stomach and boat. For the crews of the smaller entrants, a long night at sea in less than ideal conditions. Tamar Marine, Marine Alarms and the Motor Sailor St John's Hospital last to leave the river. All were in for a wild night at sea.
Maybe you're crazy in the head, baby. When your day is long.
Flinders Island is peaceful. It takes a fair bit to wake up the locals. But by 10 p.m. on Good Friday, Lady Barron was abuzz. The whole island turns out to welcome the yachts and cheer the runners as they make their way along the roads. At 9 minutes past 10, their vigil was rewarded. Island Paint Pro deposited her runners on the dock over 2 hours ahead of record time, testament to the conditions during the first sail. Runners Patrick Killer-Lee from Launceston and Sydney's Andrew Grimes set off on the longest run.
I think we'll be glad when we hit the foot of the mountain. It'll give us a break from just the monotony of this. But right now, it's a great run.
Night is yours alone.
Back on the wharf, questions were being asked as to the whereabouts of Bastet, the early leader. They were soon answered.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was a rock, a big bommy, just standing up on its own. Nothing around it, nothing either side of it.
What sort of damage has been done to the boat?
Well, it split the glass on the inside, and that's sweating, that's leaking, so I guess the outside's even worse.
The end result, stuck hard aground for 30 minutes and enough damage to the boat's starboard hull to take her out of the race. Bastet's runners Matt Dalziel and Richard Eccleston had already departed, relishing the run, their blood still pumping from the sail. They were determined to put in a good run, retirement or not. They had company, the first 8 boats in by midnight and all boats in before noon the next day. Last year's Mountain Kings, Andrew Cromar and Tim Sloan, who already held each run record, were campaigning for Vallaroo. They had a point to prove. The runners off race favourite Computerland, Jerry Oldfield, a veteran for this run, and Chris French, they were in for a long night. Georgetown-based brothers Nick and Richard Edmonds, with their identical 14-metre sloops, had diced with each other all the way, arriving less than a minute apart. Their runners Mick Lee, Phil Tuck, Paul Stankham and Steve Bentz ran as a foursome, dodging wildlife. Lee and Tuck from Haphazard finished the stronger over the final kilometres, only 5 minutes faster than Stankham and Bentz over the 7 hours.
We'll have to wait till Sunday.
Vallaroo's runners Tim Sloan and Andrew Cromar hadn't gone far when trouble struck. Andrew Cromar, one of Australia's premier distance runners, was in trouble. Seasickness during the sail had dehydrated him. Running was quickly becoming out of the question.
How are you feeling, Andrew? Pretty crook.
He had endured the pain for 30 kilometres, his stomach feeling as if it was causing internal injury.
Have you made a decision, Andrew, what you're going to do?
I think I'm going to have to bail out.
Sloan continued the run, retiring at the halfway mark. Safety necessitating a partner.
Is Andrew okay, over?
I think he's okay. I haven't seen him yet.
Yeah, he's not too bad. He's just resting.
Yeah, he's just resting. He's okay. He'll be all right. It's just in severe pain, that's all.
Mount Strzelecki, Flinders' highest peak, has a deserved reputation. 3 hours slugging it out along the road masks what's ahead. A steep climb, slippery trails and freezing weather on top. For these reasons, it and all the other mountains are manned by local volunteers, safety their first priority.
There you go, fellas.
Back at Lady Barron, the sailors were grabbing a few hours rest, so they thought. Computerland's Peter Fletcher woke them by the news that runner Chris French was injured and partner Jerry Oldfield was returning to start afresh. Fletcher to be his new partner.
How do you feel about going second time, Jerry?
Not very keen, I can tell you. I'll try.
How far did you get?
Well, right to the top of the mountain, just probably 1 kilometre, 2 kilometres from the mountain. And then we had to come back down the mountain and he couldn't go any further. We would have never got him off the top of the mountain.
That's in 6 or 7 hours.
6 or 7 hours, you're keen.
Obviously blows our chances out of the water a bit, but who knows, it's a 3 peaks race, anything can happen.
As the early dawn light spread over Flinders Island, the first runners returned. Killer Lee and Grimes kept Island Paint Pro in first place.
Down.
Scottish pair Adrian Davis and John Coyle from Business Post emerged through the dawn light along the gravel roads back to Lady Barron. Their time an astonishing 6 hours, 8 minutes, an hour faster than the rest.
This is a hard one. The rest are easy. As long as we get there on the daylight.
Business Post arrived in 9th place and left in 4th. The 1997 Three Peaks was turning into a race of attrition. 16 starters, 3 were already out. The race headed south towards the next port, the lead to change dramatically. Unlike the first sailing leg with its stiff westerlies, the second from Flinders Island to Coles Bay is under clear skies with light and fluky winds. Reaching down the coastline of Tasmania during the night, the leaders out of Flinders watched as a set of navigation lights slowly overhauled them. It could have been only one boat. John Saul, sailing under his trademark pink spinnaker, outsailed them all. Leaving Lady Baron in 9th place, Computerland passed everyone. The weary runners, Chris French and Jerry Oldfield, who earlier completed over 100 kilometres rested, whilst Saul, Fletcher and Royce Salter changed sails 18 times in an effort to make up time.
Well, I hate to give away a trade secret, but there was an awful parking lot under St Patrick's Head there, and a lot of our competition, unfortunately, got stuck there.
In the chase down the coast, both Flinders Island Community and Haphazard fared well. Island Paint Pro also in the pack. Coles Bay, an idyllic beachfront town, quadruples its population for the Easter weekend. Many lured by the area's superb offshore fishing and the Three Peaks race. Computerland had set course for the sleepy town as she swept past the towering granite cliffs that typify the Freycinet Peninsula. A last sail change and short session on the bikes brought the boat into the dock and a typical Coles Bay welcome. Chris French had recovered enough to take on the run. Jerry Oldfield was still trying to shake stiffness from his legs. Following Computerland into Coles Bay was Richard Edmonds' Flinders Island Community. Chased by another overnight mover, McKillop's Insurance. The 12-metre Crowther catamaran from Melbourne. Alex McNaughton skippered her from 6th place to 3rd. Also within sight of Coles Bay were Haphazard, Island Paint Pro and Naiad Business Post. Skippers telling the same story.
A bit frustrating. There's a lot of stops and starts in it. We're a little bit too close to the shore and the wind was out offshore. You could see these green lights passing us out to sea, so when we headed out to where they were, everything came good.
The remainder of the fleet was stretched back as far as Flinders Island, while Oldfield and French attacked the run. Transversing the Hazards track, the route follows Wineglass Bay before climbing steeply over Mounts Freycinet and Graham. Tourists and daywalkers have worn the track to a ribbon of dirt. Today's athletes wouldn't be able to enjoy the view. Scottish pair Coyle and Davies already had the fastest time on Flinders Island. For this run, they had their sights set higher.
About 4.5. 4.5? Yeah, 4.5-ish. Hopefully.
As regulars of the Scottish Three Peaks race, an event similar to this around the northern coast of Scotland, they're used to steep hill climbs and twisting mountain tracks. But the record they're chasing was one that many believe is unassailable. By lunchtime, the jetty crowd had swirled, on hand to welcome back Jerry Oldfield and Chris French. The Computerland runners had completed the distance in 5 hours and 5 minutes, giving the boat a good lead on the water. She headed off, preparing to round Tasman Island. 8 yachts reached Coles Bay before Computerland departed. This put 16 runners on the track at once. As the afternoon wore on, Coyle and Davies were stamping a new authority on this race. They'd wanted to run about 4.5 hours. They surprised everyone when they returned in 4 hours 11 minutes, 30 seconds ahead of the record.
40, 20 in bogs, that's all we need. Go for it, Bruce.
Business Post was 3rd yacht back on the water. Flinders Island Community had left 39 minutes ahead. Runners Stankham and Bence had returned with the second fastest run time. As the weary yachties wait for their exhausted runners, all are watching the ever-darkening skies. Westerly squalls soon whipping up the seas of Great Oyster Bay with the certainty of a miserable night ahead. None of the skippers would chance the Denison Canal in strong westerlies. Too many had vivid memories of last year when 6 yachts were stranded there and forced to retire. Whether you were running Freycinet or sailing the southeast coast, tonight was going to be long, cold and very, very wet. Surging down the southeast coast before multiple squall fronts, all the yachts made good time as most forewent the opportunity of shortening the leg by 17 nautical miles via the Denison Canal at Dunalley. They were welcomed to the Great Southern Ocean by the majestic towering cliffs around Tasman Island and Cape Raoul. This area of the planet is not noted for its kindness towards sailors, let alone exhausted runners. The winds, whilst remaining strong, did not approach gale force strength. Crews could manage through the night and into Easter Monday. John Saul and his weary crew on Computerland provided the target for all other competitors. Their lead out of Coles Bay was 21 minutes, not much in the skipper's eyes.
We can win it, so can about 4 or 5 others. So many variables on tonight. She'll just be bash away and see what happens.
The long slog around the outside route was worth it for Computerland. She increased her lead over second-placed Flinders Island Community to 1 hour and 24 minutes. Business Post moved into third place, courtesy of a superb run by the Scottish duo. Bruce Guy and his crew of Steve Walker and Mark Guy, the race's youngest competitor, kept the pressure on, not wanting to waste the efforts of Coyle and Davies. Haphazard in fourth place rounded out the leading bunch. By early morning, Storm Bay was showing her best manners, light winds slowing the charge and preventing any chance of an overall race record. Computerland ghosted towards the sailing leg finish at Rest Point Casino. Once again, Jerry Oldfield and Chris French made ready to take over the reins of their team's effort. A final safety check, and all that stood between them and victory was a 35-kilometre run straight up Mount Wellington, standing 1,271 metres above them. Flinders Island Community held her second place from Coles Bay, Business Post retaining third. Most yachts found light winds in the Derwent River, slowing their progress towards the line. French and Oldfield headed towards the summit.
Do you want some more chocolate?
Do you want anything else? No, that'll do. See you up then.
Approaching the mountain peak, wind chill reduces the temperature by 15 degrees, making the summit that bit more uncomfortable. For these two remarkable athletes, comfort was by now a secondary consideration. The descent from Mount Wellington is almost a free fall to the bottom. Most of the way down, the finish line is in sight, teasing the runners as their legs fade after 3 torturous challenges in as many days. Traditionally, the whole crew joins in as their runners close the line, all celebrating their achievement. For the Computerland team of Saul, Peter Fletcher, Royce Salter, Jerry Oldfield and Chris French, this was their second victory in a row, a feat never before achieved in this event.
Back-to-back's not so important, just a really good, hard struggle in a top endurance event like this. That was fantastic in itself. For five good mates to go off and do the things we've done the last 4 days, huge achievement in personal goals.
The superhuman achievement, completing the adventure in 2 days, 23 hours, 32 minutes and 45 seconds, was all the better considering the problems they faced on Flinders Island.
Obviously, none of us wanted to give up, none of us wanted to retire. We always wanted to be there and always wanted to have a go. It's a 3 peaks race, anything can happen, so you can't retire.
Flinders Island Community, skippered by Richard Edmonds with a crew of sailors David Milne and Phil O'Sine, and runners Paul Stankham and Steve Bence finished second, 110 minutes behind the winners.
In comparison to other years, I guess it was so quick first up and then quite slow in the middle and then quite rough at the finish, so it had everything, this one.
Business Post, skippered by Bruce Geyer, was third, a further 95 minutes back due to a second successive running record set by the Flying Scotsman Adrian Davis and John Coyle. The pair virtually sprinted up Mount Wellington to set a new mark of 2 hours, 28 minutes and 1 second, beating the old record by just under 2 minutes. Haphazard finished fourth. Ericsson Business Phones fifth with the New Zealand runners aboard.
You Tasmanians must be pretty sick, I think, to plan an event like this. It's a great event, and as Dave said, you just got to take it sort of one step at a time. On the first run, I was just thinking, how are we going to do 2 more runs?
Wild Apple crossed sixth, followed by Underwater Video Systems, McKillop's Insurance, Tamar Marine and Island Paint Pro. The fleet rounded out by Simplot Australia, Marine Alarms and the Motor Sailor St John's Hospital. The 1997 Bogues Three Peaks race run and won. It brought men and women together in one of the world's great challenges. An event that's tough, unforgiving and above all demands respect.